I probably made that look so much worse than it needed to. So if my hair looks like shit throughout this whole video, um, blame blame me. Hi, how are you? My name is Rosie, and this is my video memoir. And it's currently 2 in the morning, like I normally film my videos at. I normally film these very, very late because I don't know, the early mornings just feel comfy to me. I've always felt at home in the wee hours of the morning, in the, well, everything's still dark, but you know it's still a new day. It's weird. I don't really understand myself, and that's why I do this. And I thought I would talk about gender and how gender has shaped my life, how my gender has evolved over the past, I'd say, 2, 3 years, maybe longer. And basically just take you through my journey and what I did to get there, and uh, my journey with gender starts, God, when I was a child, like way, 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 way back. I had never really felt, you know, gender never really meant that much to me as a child, you know? It never really affected my life in a very prominent way, and I think that's mainly due to how I was raised. I was raised very much without gender roles, you know? Like people would make the odd joke here or there, like about, you know, gender roles and stuff. But my parents typically raised me pretty, you know, removed from gender and the expectations that the gender binary typically puts on people and like those around me. So my experience with gender was relatively stable, I'd say. It was relatively non-intrusive. And I think that's why, you know, that's one of the reasons it might have taken me this long to sort of come to the realization I had come to in the past few years. Mainly because it's just gender was just wasn't really something I had thought about. It never really affected my life in such a way. But you know how the typical story goes. You know, you come out as a certain thing, your gender changes, and things from your childhood tend to start to like piece together in a pretty coherent way. Like I remember back when this is definitely like some very like typical shit you'd hear from like your average um your average coming out story, like, you know, like, oh, I played with girls toys when I was a kid. Like I didn't really play with girls toys, but one thing I definitely did used to do was I would collect these magazines that you used to be able to buy at like the convenience store, the supermarket or whatever. Um, and they were Disney themed magazines for girls that would espouse like cool little tidbits and information to like, you know, young girls, young cis girls about like, you know, makeup and jewelry and like, you know, typical cis normative girly shit, you know? Um, that but the thing is that didn't really have anything to do with like me expressing anything specific to gender. I'm gonna be honest, I just really liked the comics at the back. Like there was this one storyline, it was a High School Musical comic, because at the back of each one they had comics like storylines that you could follow, and they would follow on through through each magazine, through each issue that would come out. And there was a really good High School Musical comic that I really liked and really wanted to follow. Toys also, like, toys, I never really ascribed anything to toys consciously, at least, but I do remember one instance where I expressed to my dad. I was actually reading because my dad would be the one that would actually get all of these for me. Because I was reading and I saw that they were advertising High School Musical themed Barbie toys. I don't know if they were specifically Barbie or if they were just, like Barbie clones or Barbie types. Can you tell that I had a bit of a High School Musical phase? But I remember expressing the desire to play with these toys, and he didn't really like react in a negative way. He just sort of, he just thought it a bit weird, and I think that mainly was due to like just the kinds of interests that I have. It wasn't really a gender thing. It was more like, but you play with these things, you like these things, so why do you want to? And like you couldn't really get them here in South Africa anyway. So like ultimately, I don't think it would have been kind of pointless to even like go and try and look. I am playing with my hair so much. I am so sorry. Yeah, like my childhood was relatively non-gendered. It wasn't until my teenage years where gender became a bit more of a defining feature of my identity. Like, being a man. Oh god, how that would bite me in the ass. My stepdad is a bit more of a patriarch. He's never really like forced gender down my throat, but he definitely helped raise me in more of more of a traditional fashion, as you would to someone who's assigned male at birth in the world that we live in. Because he's very much a product of his time. He was in the military. I had a very typical male teenagehood. So like those same, like he enshrined things like like chivalry and like typical male characteristics, societal expectations, stuff like that. Like men should be the provider, men should be strong, men should be this, men should be that, men should be all of these things. Typical kind of stuff. And I think that was really sort of the catalyst for questioning, because this was sort of in my reactionary phase when I was a teenager. I was watching a lot of very stupid anti-SJW media. I was watching a lot of right-wing creators. I was watching a lot of not good content. And one individual I ended up landing on, this is very far removed from like right-wing stuff, but I started watching a YouTuber called Alex Costa. And Alex Costa, I think it's an all-right channel, if a bit, extremely heteronormative. But it was basically just a channel that teaches young men how to dress well, how to work with what they have, how to, just be clean, I guess. Be like, it's typically like, I think Alex Costa specifically, like, despite like the very hyper masculine presence, like he's very big, he's very strong, he's very masculine. It had a much more feminine coded approach, I guess you could say, because he treated like men's grooming in a similar way that like women's grooming channels would. Jesus, women's grooming. But it was an okay channel, but having those ideas and those like that this is what men should do, this is what men should be constantly affecting how I view myself and how I make style decisions and how I make decisions about how I did my hair, make decisions about how I did certain things, about that really started to affect my mental health, and it started to affect a lot about my life. to the point where I really started questioning a lot of my own existence. And it wasn't really until I started watching more leftist content, more progressive content, more content that like taught me about gender that wasn't filtered through the lens of some reactionary who just wanted to be shitty and hates transgender people. Like I started actually engaging with the ideas, with the rhetoric of, progressive gender philosophy. And I started to come to a lot of realizations about myself. I started thinking a lot. I'd say this was around 2017, 2018, so I was 18, 19, and I was in a relationship. I was in a relationship at the time. And we used to bond over our collective, our shared reactionary views. I won't go into it because a lot of it is very harmful, and I don't want to repeat that sort of rhetoric out there into the world. But we would say a lot of very hurtful shit about a lot of people. Very hurtful shit. And it's not something I'm proud of, but I stopped. I don't do that anymore. In the past 4 years, things have changed a lot. But besides the point, that's besides the point. There was questions going through my mind, and I distinctly remember sending them a message and going like, "Hey, how would you feel if I wanted to get thigh highs?" Because I wanted to get a pair of thigh highs. I really wanted a fucking pair of thigh highs because they looked cool, they looked comfy, they looked warm, and I thought that would be an interesting way to sort of start exploring my gender identity. And she did not take that very well, whatsoever. I started getting, the typical like, why do you want to do this? I don't want to be seen with someone who presents this way, but acts this way, but looks this way, but is this way. Like, that sort of, there's like, I really like masculine men. I really like big, burly, hairy men. And the fact that you encapsulate these ideals, which I did at the time, and you're wearing thigh highs, that doesn't gel well with me. Like, well, shit. Fuck. So every idea I had suddenly just out the window, gone, not to be thought of again. Also, I thought they kept going, they kept happening, as they do. Eventually, I got out of that relationship. Eventually. And as part of my healing process from the breakup, I really actually, because I had the freedom now to sort of explore gender and explore my identity and explore these things in a way that I hadn't thought about before. And eventually, after a lot of deliberation and a lot of conversations with myself, I started identifying as agender. I started, I just rejected gender entirely. I just put the concept out of my mind. I don't want to be a man anymore. I don't want to be a guy. I don't like it. I hate it. It feels horrible, not just from the expectations put on me, but I started realizing that there was something fundamentally different inside me. There was, like, I had never, and I think this also might stem from my lack of connection to gender as a child, because I realized that I don't really have a gender, but at the same time, when I was identifying as agender, there were also a lot of other thoughts that I couldn't really get out of my head. And I pushed them away so much because my teenage years were very masculine, and they were very much defined by masculine rhetoric and masculine ideals. And the thoughts I was having were very, very tough to deal with, even as an agender person at the time. And it was easy to put those off because around that time, I think it was like 6 months after I started identifying as agender, I went to a pride march. I met some really great new friends, and I met someone else. Not at the pride march, it was after the pride march. But I met someone else, someone who I am still with currently, and they're amazing. They're great. I love them a lot. I have a promise ring. It's cute. And it was easy to put those thoughts away for a very long time because of, all these external things. Like life was going okay, and at the same time I also had a new job. I was starting a new job, so that was taking up a lot of my time. That was taking up a lot of my head. There just wasn't time and there wasn't space for these thoughts. And then we went into lockdown. The world plunged into the red alert pandemic scenario. And we were stuck inside. My place of work temporarily closed down. We were actually, in our specific scenario, we were the last industry to open up when the lockdowns started opening up in phases. And I had a lot of time to myself to think. There were some very bad experiences with weed that I had that sort of forced me to be very, very introspective. And in November 2020, I was sitting with my partner. She was doing my makeup because I wanted to experiment with makeup. And she finished. And I looked at myself in my phone. And I looked to her. And I said, "Oh my God, I'm a woman." And that's when everything changed. All of the thoughts, all of the everything, it clicked into place. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know at all. It was such a massive revelation for me. I just didn't know what to do with that information. And for a while, I didn't. The only person that knew was her and me. And she was, she didn't care whatsoever. She loved me when I was agender, and she loved me as a woman. She's been calling me my new name. She's been calling me, she, her, and all that great stuff for the longest. And it took me a while to sort of really accept it myself. I'm actually still having a lot of issues accepting it myself. Gender has been interesting. The idea of gender. I've been doing a lot of, research into it. I've been just doing my own sort of like self introspection, coming up with my own ideas, reading a lot about, gender as a whole. And I don't really like it. I don't think gender as a concept is very cool. I don't think it's sexy. I don't think it's fun. I don't think it's nice. I think it just hurts people. Because, like, for example, you come across the term toxic masculinity a lot in, center left to progressive spaces. And for a long time, I didn't understand what toxic masculinity was. I was the target for a lot of very harmful and frankly wrong rhetoric about terms like toxic masculinity. Because, these organizations, these spaces, they typically target, sad, socially disaffected young men to recruit. And I was the target. But when you look into the actual, concept of toxic masculinity, you realize that it's a set of social expectations that broadly harm men and encourage men to harm those around them. And, why? I always find myself asking, like, why? Like, where do these concepts come from? Who invented gender? I want to find them, and I want to throw them away. I want to say very kind of mean things to their face so that they feel bad for making something that makes people feel bad. I want to find the inventor of gender. The gender-venter. But, like, that's mostly my experience with gender. And, I still feel like it's constantly evolving. Like, these days, I'm a lot more ambivalent about my gender identity because the idea of woman, like, it's strange. It's so weird to me because some days I feel like maybe I'm just gender fluid, and I swap between women and nothing. Like, there are some days where I'm so ambivalent and so lethargic and so just about my gender identity that it makes me wonder if I even am transgender. But then I realize that's just dysphoria. And there are other days where I will do my makeup really nice and I will wear something really affirming and I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, holy shit, that's who I am. That's me. That's a woman. That's me. And I've been on, hormone replacement therapy, feminization hormones for, say, 4 months now at this point. And it's helping, I'm not super well endowed just yet, but, I'm hoping. we hope. But it's cameras. What you gonna do, right? But yeah, I'd mostly gotten what I needed to say out in most of that footage anyway, luckily. So I think that's all that's really left to say is that's how I navigated the gender binary, I guess. Yeah, that's my story, mostly. Still got a lot to tell. Got a lot of ideas for videos. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm sorry for the kind of abrupt ending. I really wanted to like phase that out in a bit more of a less jarring and a bit more of a smooth manner, but it's 2 in the morning. I really don't want to set up the same shit tomorrow at 2 in the morning. Kind of just want to get this video done and dusted. It's already gone on way longer than the last one. So, my name is Rosie. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you did. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed hearing my experience with gender and coming out and realizing these things. And I hope you just enjoyed listening. I hope it was a nice, comfy time. So, if you like this video, give it a like, give it a share it with your friends. If you have any queer friends who think they might get something out of this, share it with them. If you want to subscribe to the channel, do that, because I'm going to be talking about this stuff a lot more in the future. But yeah, that's the video. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I hope we can be comfy together another time.